Welcome to another episode of Remembering Who I Am. And today's topic is what mind perceives as reality. This is actually a video that I did this morning in Spanish, and I just had the inspiration to do it in English. So, what mind perceives as reality. Okay. It's very simple, but from the perspectives of this eye, it may appear to be very difficult to comprehend. And actually, it's not that it's difficult to comprehend, it's that it's impossible, because the individual, this sense of I, doesn't want to let go of its identity as a separate individual. And when I mean that the individual doesn't want to let go of its identity, I'm not talking about the character, this person who doesn't want to let go. No, this is a projection. I mean that the mind that is projecting this illusion doesn't want to let go of the illusion, and because of that is reflected through the behavior of the individual, which in this case appears to be, I don't understand. You see, it's difficult to understand. But it's just because the mind still showing some resistance, okay? So, being consciously aware that there's nothing happening, because all being a projection from consciousness, if you want to call it that, it's just that, it's just a figment of the imagination. It's not real, but it appears to be. So let's see how mind perceives reality, okay? Limitation of words. I'm going to try to use, we're using concepts here to do the best. Remembering that there's no words, no concept, there's no way to describe anything, but this is a way to try to describe the indescribable, or trying to explain the unexplainable, okay? Because there's nothing to explain. But anyhow, so imagine there's only one mind, and that's all there is. Call it God, call it consciousness, call it space, call it infinity, call it whatever you will. It's just all there is, and there's nothing else. That's it. End of story. Within that mind, a thought appears. Just a thought, okay? In the whole, within all that there is, a thought appears. That thought is what it refers to as I as a person, I as an individual thought. It's just a thought, that's all there is to it. It's a thought in consciousness, that's all there is to it. Consciousness, what it does is that identifies itself as the thought. In other words, all that there is identifies itself as if all that there is this thought, and then through this thought, okay, it begins to perceive, and what it perceives through this thought is what it labels its reality. You see? In other words, when you're dreaming a dream, when the mind, which is all there is, let's say you are in the bed and you're dreaming a dream, there's only you. Your mind is just you, that's all. Nothing else exists. There's no perception, there's nothing. In deep sleep, there's nothing. It's just all that there is. The moment the dream happens, you, which is the one who are in bed, you identified yourself with the dream character, okay? And you call that dream character I. See, you call that character I, when in reality it's not true, because the real I is you in bed dreaming the dream. It's the only mind that there is. But the moment the mind identifies with the character in the dream, the mind says, this character, it's me. Now, because the mind is so identified with that particular character, through this particular character in the dream, it begins to perceive the differences. See, and then it begins to believe that those differences are his reality, are its reality. You see? So the mind, that is all that there is, identifies with the thought, with the character I, and then through that character, it begins to perceive the whole dream. And it believes that that dream that it's perceiving is its reality. You see? And when you're dreaming a dream, if you may notice, you don't see yourself, but you're only perceiving. But you take for granted that there's a you there in that dream perceiving. But there's no you perceiving anything. There's no you seeing anything because there's no you. It's just that the mind that is dreaming the dream, it uses the belief that it is something that is perceiving the whole thing. If the mind could be consciously aware that it's dreaming a dream, and it could see it from an outside perspective, to the point that now the mind is not identified with the thought, thinking, okay, this thought is who I am and I'm perceiving now. The mind could see the whole dream from outside, then it would not identify with the thought I. If anything, would see the thought I happening in the dream. There's one thing of being in the football field, carrying the ball and being the one making the moves, or being the spectator who's watching this I or this football player with the ball running all over the place. You see? That's why when you see we're watching the game, people watching a game or so, when I watch a game, it's really fun. It's really interesting how we can say, you should do this, look at the other guy over there, come on, pass the ball, he's over here. Because of course we're looking at it from the perspective of that, we can see the whole game. But if I was the character in that game, I cannot see the whole thing. I just got the ball here. All I know is I got one person here, the other. I don't know who's the other player on the other side of the field. But the spectator can see the other player in the other side of the field and can say, pass the ball to that one. You see? So it's kind of like in the United States, NASCAR races are very popular. So and in NASCAR, because now it's becoming so technical to the point that, my God, I mean, before, back in the day, just the driver driving the car and competing. Now you have the driver driving the car. He has, ear things or whatever, satellites and stuff, and then you have a group of people outside of the field watching the whole thing, telling them, you got a car number 2, he's passing on the left, keep on the right. It's kind of like he's doing the thing, he's doing the driving, okay? It's like, that's him doing the drive, but simultaneously there's this outside perspective that is telling him constantly, okay, watch for car number 3, number 4, watch car on the left, whatever, so I can stay focused doing this, but at the same time there's something that can see the whole thing. So now that's something that can see the whole thing. The ones over there, they are not under any pressure, meaning that they're not afraid of if the car crashes, because they're safe, just basically directing. But the one in the car, he's the one dealing with the possibility that the car can crash and all the danger that involves driving a car. So the problem we're having here is that the mind who's identified with this thought called I, okay, when the mind loses perspective of that, the mind believes that she is me, and of course that's what fear is experienced. The illusion of separation is perceived. But when the mind takes the stand back, realizing that the mind is the one looking at the whole thing, then there's no longer fear, there's a sense of peace. So it's like, it's all a game of identification and disidentification. Now, this identification or disidentification, I hope the word exists, is not something that I'm doing. It's just a happening. So this video, for example, is not something that I personally am doing. This is a happening. A happening for the benefit of the mind itself, so that the mind itself can remind itself that this is all a dream. You see, so it's a game of hide and seek. So again, the mind perceives as reality this illusory world when the mind is perceiving through this I, through me. See, that's why I keep saying like the mind through me, because these eyes are not seeing anything. This eyes doesn't see anything. There's no such thing as this eyes seeing anything. something is seeing and is using the illusion of these two eyes in order to see. That's why this is not something that I can do anything in order to undo this whole thing. However, when the mind becomes conscious, through the character, there's a behavior that reflects that consciousness. And so right now, as you see, these words are just simply pointers. These words are not the answer, because there's no one who can experience any answer. These words are not a solution. These words are not an experience. This is just empty words that are being said, noise that is happening, taking the form of words, that are used so that the mind can remind itself of its reality as mind. You see? So it's a game, pretty much. And what happens though is that although I can still perceive, or perception happens, you see, there's a perception right now. I seem to see a camera in front of me. I seem to see a room around. I see a Christmas tree over here, there. I see all these things seems to be seen. They're perceived. However, there's an awareness that all of this is part of the very same thing. You see, they're part of one. They're just all the same thing. There's no separation. Separation is perceived simultaneously. There's an awareness that separation is not. And that is why when this awareness settles in, a lot of the fear falls away, because there's an understanding, it's a comprehension that it's all the same thing. Nothing is separate from me. I'm not separate from anything. And most likely the tendency is to sort of remain in a space of observance, silence. And things do happen, but they are not things that I make happen. They're just happenings. And life is a eternal happening from the perspective of the human experience of this apparent idea of separation. That's why this is something that we cannot talk about this. To whom? But it appears that it can be talked about, but in the end, that's why they said that the sage is very silent. You see? Because it's resting in this space in which everything is observed. Even the actions are observed. So it's not like I'm sitting at the couch observing life happening. It's that life happens even when I'm in the midst of doing whatever it is that I'm doing. And the relaxation comes as a result of knowing that I don't need to go after anything. I don't need to chase anything in order to get or to achieve or to anything. It just, things do happen. If achievements were supposed to happen through me, well, the body will find itself achieving, you see. But it's not doing it because it thinks that it's going to find something there. It's just simply a happening. When I'm recording a song, I don't record it because I think what's going to happen or whatever. I'm just enjoying the process of observing the recording session take place and learning more about mixing and all that kind of stuff. But I don't do it because I think that if I do that, I can become rich or I can become famous and many people will like me or whatever. Or I can, it does none of that. It's just the experience itself. That's why there's a movie that I've always recommend to watch. Especially if you've seen it before, it's good to watch it again, but from this perspective, which is not from this non-dual perspective, it's just for this little thing that I just said about recording music and everything, which is called Forrest Gump. That's a great movie to watch because what you see right now is an individual who's living present. He's not giving anything, he's not giving meaning to anything. He just observes, just live life. He feels what he feels. He does what he does, but he doesn't question why he's doing it. He just simply is doing it. You see? Well, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You know, life is just a happening that is happening to no one. And if as a result of creating music, something were to happen that I'm not expecting, well, that's fine. You know, whether nothing could happen or something could happen, it's irrelevant. Right now, this video is a happening. I'm not doing it because I think that if I do these videos, I'm going to get followers, or I'm going to get people to listen to me, or I'm going to become famous, or no, none of that. This is a happening that is happening through me, and I'm just observing this happening through me. I'm not judging it. I'm not resisting it. I'm not making anything special out of it. It's just the observance that this is happening. And these videos they just started just, again, a couple of days ago. Yeah, I know that there's quite a few, but in one day I filmed like 5, because it's just an inspiration that came through. In the past, in all the years past, I've been doing all these videos in Spanish. You know, I got over 1,000, 1,200 or 1,300, I don't know, videos already for the last, God knows, for the last 10 years or so. But again, these are just been happening. So yeah, I became quote unquote famous in the Spanish speaking community. But that's just a happening. You see, it's not something that I did for the purpose of. It's just a happening, and I'm just observing life happening. And maybe this is the last video that I'll ever do. And God knows if life will put me to do something else. But so far, life has put me to write books, to talk and everything. And what is important is not to make any of that important. Not to make any of those experiences as real, in a sense of just, again, don't make an issue out of it. It's just happening. You see, so when I'm giving a talk or a conference, I'm not a conferencist. This is just life happening, and the role that I seem to be playing in that moment is someone who's giving a talk. The same way that right now I'm playing the role of somebody who's filming a video, recording a video, I don't know. And in each instant, the role may change. But none of that is important anyway, because it makes no difference. The important thing is never lose sight of the fact that consciousness is all that there is. And in that sense, consciousness is what I am. Not the dream character. The dream character is the thought, the filter thought, through which consciousness filters everything. That's how perception is born. And then perception is what makes believe that all that I perceived as differences and whatever is my reality. But as this awareness continues to settle in, then reality is what I am, is not what I see, is not what I hear, is not what I feel, is not what I perceive. Reality is, that's all there is. And this is just simply a projection where it appears to be an I, little I, that supposedly is talking here and saying things. But then life is a relaxation space, It's a it's this. There's no hurry. Everything happens because it's supposed to happen, or because I am making them happen. So I don't have to worry about, I gotta do this, because if I don't do this, I'm gonna have to meet this deadline. No, there's no deadlines to meet, because even if I find myself moving towards meeting a deadline, there's an awareness that knows that it's not me, that I am moving towards meeting a deadline. The character I moving towards meeting a deadline is a happening that I have no control over it. So it's just kind of funny, because it's now just watching the movie. Oh, what am I going to do now? Curious, because now it's a wonderful mystery. I don't know. And what made this mystery scary is the idea that I'm a separate individual that is at the mercy of evil or something like that. But when there's an understanding, an awareness, not a mental or not an intellectual understanding. We're not talking about intellect here. I'm just talking about awareness. When there's an understanding, an awareness that God is all that there is, that love is all that there is, and nothing else, then again, it's just observing what love is going to do with me. And what I mean by that is that don't make the mistake of thinking that love looks in a particular way, because then we're missing the mark. That means that I will never have an accident. That means I will never have an injury. That means I will never have any bad days. That don't mean that I will never have that everything's going to be wonderful. No, it just means that there's an awareness in which I can rest in spite of whatever may be happening, because whatever is happening is a perception that is being filtered through the thought of separation, or the belief of the thought in separation. And as the mind rests in this space, then once again becomes the observer of the experience, and then everything is just what is happening. And you may say, God, but what if I get an accident? My question is, are you having an accident right now? Then there's not even a point of bringing that to here. And if you have a thought that says, what happens if I get into an accident? Well, even that thought is observed. See? So now everything is observed. I observe myself when I'm feeling fine, and I observe myself when I'm not feeling that fine. Because if I'm not losing sight of north, as I usually say, then if the mind that is dreaming the dream is aware that it's dreaming a dream, who cares what's happening in the dream? Only when the minds forget that it's dreaming a dream and identified itself with a character in the dream, that's where the suffering and the fear arises. You see? So in reality, there's nothing to do. It's just all this space silence. I was having a private consultation. Somebody called me, wanted to have a consultation with me, and in the end, after the consultation, it went down to simplicity of, so there's nothing to do, there's nothing to say. Exactly. You see, first they relate all the stories and all that kind of stuff, and okay, I observed the story because they just need to get that out. But then after that, then said, okay, that story is wonderful, but let's focus. Let's see what's really happening here. You see, because again, people bring their problems not realizing that their problem is not where they think the problem is. The problem is not your finances. The problem is not your health. The problem is not the government. The problem is not your family. The problem is not your body. It's not your work or your job or nothing. The problem is that you have forgotten who you are, and you're identified with this dream character who thinks to be having all these problems. You see? When the mind becomes conscious of what it is, then you realize that all of that is just simply an appearance that has nothing to do with you. And the interesting thing about it is that when the mind rests in that space, whatever needs to be done in order to deal with those situations is a happening that is going to be taking place through you anyway. You see? And when there's an awareness, a conscious awareness of what I really am, then the fear, the only fear that usually arises, it begins to fall apart, and that is the fear of death. The fear of something can happen to me. Can happen to whom? You see? And again, that's where the mind rests. And this is where we're going always to the resting of that space. Because the questions dropped away. There's no questions. All that there is this instance. That's it. That's it. And the only reason why question arises is because the mind is identified with the person, with this idea, this is who I am, and from here comes all kinds of questions. But as the mind keeps remembering what it is, again, all the questions immediately start falling apart. Because no matter what the question may seem from the outside, it's always the same answer. See, the answer doesn't change. And all that there is this. This is all there is. This is where I rest. Wondering, if anything, what's going to be happening, in a sense of what's happening next. But it's not even wondering in the sense that I'm looking forward to see what's happening. No, I'm just basically sharing. It's just words. It's a stage in which I don't know what am I going to say next. I don't know the next syllable that is going to come out of my mouth. I know what it is the moment it comes out. Oh, that's what I was supposed to say. Oh, that's what I was supposed to do. Why? Because it's what is being done. But I'm not doing it. It's being done through me. You see? And that's the place where it can rest, because when the mind begins to rest in that space where the attention is so not so much in this thought, in this idea, in this projection, that's how the mind sort of start resting in a space of observance. You see? And that's where then this awareness, it's just something that cannot be explained in words. That has to be, you have to be lived if you're supposed to live that experience. But if for some reason life have you watching a video like this, not my video, or I'm not saying that I'm saying anything special, I'm saying that information to this matter, which could be this video or any other video or any other book or whatever, if the mind is leading itself to watch this kind of information, well, good news. It could be said that the awakening process is beginning to take place and you have been one of the chosen ones, because otherwise you would have been doing something else. Why would you bother checking information like this one if you're too busy thinking that you want something other? That doesn't mean that while we're watching information like this one, we don't still like other things that may not go in conjunction with what we're talking here. No, it could happen, of course. I mean, I knew all this when I started speaking, because that's what something that happened through me. I wasn't intending for it to happen. It's just something that naturally took over, and I just simply observed life doing this with me. I had the theory fairly clear, but yet my behavior was not giving testimony of the theory that I knew. Well, because this is a process of that's the process life was taking me for me to heal, to remember. You see? So again, it could happen in many different ways. Some people have an instantaneous awakening process. That could happen, and as many people have happened that. As a matter of fact, most of the people who have that, they were never interested in spirituality. That's why I got a friend of mine that says that the ones like myself who've been going through all this process of the searching and all that stuff, we're the last in the class. I was the dumbest in the class, and that's why I had to go through all this apparent process of seeking and whatever. But that's okay, it's no big deal. I'm just now seeing that it's just all there is. And that's it. It's just very simple. So now there's this awareness that this is just a thought, that this personal apparent I, is just a thought in consciousness, and it's not I, the one who sees nor to perceive anything. It's consciousness through me who perceive and appears to see everything. And the more that it's been more settled, then life is just a happening. What's going to happen with me? I have no clue. There's no future. All that there is this moment, and I'm just simply resting in this moment. That's all there is. And again, just life keeps surprising me in the sense of it's just showing me what I'm going to do next. Sometimes may appear that I know, but most of the time I don't even know. So this is just a happening. Life is a happening. This is all a projection. It's a Maya. It's an illusion. It has nothing to do with what I am. What I am, what you are, what we are, all that there is that which cannot be explained, but nor can be described. We've been trying to describe it and explain it. God, love, consciousness, awareness, infinity, absolute. It doesn't matter. All that there is